The 20-Minute Call is brought to you by SSK Industries, home of Cyprus, USA. Welcome to the 20-Minute Call, the podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, you'll enjoy the 20-Minute Call, hosted by me, James LeBarry. My guest today is a highly accomplished and widely respected figure in the world of skydiving. Wendy Kiwi Smith has built an extraordinary career as an athlete, aerial cinematographer, coach, and safety leader whose influence has been felt across the sport for decades. With more than 23,000 jumps, 10 world records, 2 European records, 3 Guinness World Records, and an Emmy Award, Wendy has captured some of the most iconic moments in skydiving while helping push the boundaries of human flight. Her work has appeared in commercials, live global broadcasts, and major film productions, and as Chief Safety Officer and Aerial Coordinator for Everest Skydive, she helped execute some of the highest altitude skydives ever attempted. Beyond her accomplishments in the air, Wendy has played an important role in shaping safety, instruction, and mentorship within the sport. Through leadership roles in New Zealand and as founder of the Freefly Kiwi School of Body Flight, she has helped influence generations of skydivers through her commitment to precision, discipline, and growth. In 2025, Wendy was inducted into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame in recognition of a career defined by excellence, leadership, and lasting impact. I'm honored to welcome Wendy Kiwi Smith to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Hi, Wendy.
Good morning.
How are you?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you. That was a very beautiful introduction. Goodness me. Thank you very much. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing super well, and we're on opposite sides of the world. You are calling in from New Zealand, I believe.
Yes, it's morning time here in New Zealand, March, my birthday month, and it's when the weather just starts to get a little bit fresher in the mornings and the days are still beautiful and sunny. It's still summer, but you can tell it's coming to the end of that summer season.
When I read your bio there, how do you receive it?
Sometimes it's a little bit of a shock because I have to go, well, yes, I did do that, and I have been doing that. You don't often go back and reflect on your own life all the time. You keep going. Every now and then it is nice just to be stopped in your shoes and just go, hey, let's talk about it.
I met you for the first time last year when you were inducted into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame. And my takeaway in meeting you is you are a lady of the world, though you come from maybe the smallest corner of it. You are an incredibly strong woman. Those were my takeaways. Would I be correct?
That's very astute. Yes, I do come from an extremely corner of the world, way down under. I grew up on a sheep and cattle farm in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand. People always used to say, oh, we come to New Zealand, it feels like stepping back 40 years. But there is a beauty in that too in some respects. Yeah, so I grew up in a very small community. Our fun was created by us. As kids, we were on the farm. I loved my horse. I rode my horse to school. And we would say, we could disappear all weekend and my parents wouldn't really worry because we could be 5 or 10 miles down the road with one of the neighbours or you were encouraged to be creative, explore things and adapt and look after yourself from a really young age. So I consider myself very lucky to have had such a wonderful childhood. And then I left New Zealand when I was 21 years of age with a nursing certificate. And there my journey began, off to England, first of all.
Can I pause before we get that far into your journey? Firstly, I believe you're from a small town called Patoka, is that right?
Yes.
So I Google mapped that, and I was expecting to see like a town of sorts, but really no. And suddenly it made me think, it looks like, I'm guessing it hasn't really changed much since you grew up. I mean, it is so remote. And I wanted to state that because the thought that someone could come out of not really even a town, I mean, it's just like maybe a school. There's just not much there to be on the world stage of skydiving and to have done something as extraordinary and as few people in the world that have jumped from from Everest. It's kind of amazing when you look at that. When I first met you, you said, "Oh, I was a farm girl from this small town," to really, into the Hall of Fame. I mean, kind of amazing.
There is different and people who have extraordinary opportunities, but growing up, I suppose you've heard of Sir Edmund Hillary. He was New Zealand's hero. I actually lost my father. My father died when I was 12 and a half, but he had an extraordinary resemblance to Sir Edmund in looks, with his nose, and he's quite a big, tall man. I didn't get the height in my family, but my dad was about 6'3". Anyway, so Edmund Hillary, I grew up, he was my hero. He had summited Mount Everest, and everyone was extremely, extremely proud of him in New Zealand. It just gave some of us the inspiration that anything was possible. And I was lucky because I suppose the environment that I grew up in, anything was possible. So yes, you grow up strong, you grow up knowing which way the wind's blowing, you know all about the seasons, all the things that are about life and the way life is, and that through hard work you can achieve. So those things have always been ingrained into me, yeah. Patoka, yeah, it has a school. It used to have a shop, a store, which was the post office, the store, everything, and it hasn't changed.
As I observed, I have to believe that, and I'm not trying to get too hyperbolic here, but I have to believe that if there is a young boy or girl that is in that same town as you must be to them Sir Edmund Hillary. I mean, you've been around the world a few times.
A lot of people say, where's home, Wendy? But I have been a world child within skydiving throughout my life, yes.
How does a young girl from such a rural part of New Zealand even get introduced to skydiving? How was that introduction made?
That introduction was quite unusual, really. I was nursing with a girl whose husband was a parachutist, a parachute instructor. Well, I nagged her until her husband agreed that if I could get three of us together, he would teach us to do a jump. He would instruct us to do some jumps. And throughout that process, so I got my two flatmates, I roped them in, and I said, right, we're going to do a skydive. Okay, so we did. Of those three of us that first jumped, I was the only one who continued. But this was a hilarious course. The first course was at my place with a barbecue, where we did a little bit of generally looking at the equipment and laid it out on the lawn and had a look at how it all worked and talked about the wind and how things operated. And then the second part of the session was at the instructor's house, where he strung us up in his garage and we did cutaway practices. And all of this was for the Paracommander Mark IIs. We're talking round parachutes, front and back. That journey began in New Zealand at a little place called Waipakarau, where I was nursing. The static lines got to a great number of 20. So I left New Zealand with 20 round parachute jumps. This was probably pre-AFF, and the Australians used to call like an AFF launch, they used to call it a drag out. So on my way to England, I stopped in Australia and I jumped at a drop zone called Elderslie. So the first jump that I did was with these two Australian kind of instructors, I suppose. But anyway, they said, oh, well, you've already got 20 jumps, and so you can do your first square parachute jump here. And I was like, oh, my goodness, how fantastic. And we'll do a drag out. And I was like, a drag out, right, okay. And because I'm so small, I don't think that was very painful for them at all. And boom, suddenly, we were in free fall. And for me, for the first time, that was like the first time I'd had 12,000 foot free fall. Yes, so that was quite an interesting couple of jumps, converting to a square parachute. And then I was on my way to England, where I would find another drop zone and new friends.
When you got your 20 jumps in New Zealand, it was it wasn't a drop zone. It sounds like there was a guy that just knew how to teach you how to do it and how to plane.
That's right. Yeah, we had to have the Cessna, a jump plane, come and visit the location. So a few of the guys from down towards Wellington brought a Cessna up to Central Hawke's Bay, and these guys sort of knew each other and they seemed like, real accomplished jumpers. It was quite fascinating to them because they were going to throw a few people out on this strip, as they called it, this little airstrip. But first we had to chase the sheep off. That was the beginning.
How extraordinary. This episode is brought to you by SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA. Since its release in 1991, the Cybernetic Parachute Release System, or Cypress, has been on more than 192 million skydives and has never failed to activate when called upon in the most critical moments. Engineered and built with German precision, the device has saved over 5,400 lives. Why choose anything else when your life might just depend on it? Cypress. Now, you mentioned that you were on your way to the UK with 20 jumps. How old were you, and what was it that was taking you to the UK? Was it nursing?
I was 21 years old. I'd finished my nursing training and I'd specialised in operating theatre for another couple of years. And there was a bunch of us who had all been sharing Waipakarau together. We were nurses, teachers, secretaries. It was a rural sort of farming town. It was a smaller town. And we had a little clan of girls. We were all friends, a lot of farmers' daughters, whether we'd been to school together or we'd met there. We played netball or hockey together. There was about 8 of us. There was already 6 in the UK because Kiwis do the big OE, They do their training, they get a couple of years under their belt, then they do the big OE. That's how it used to roll. So we would go to England and all get a house and have all of us in a house in a flat all squashed in together, and we would go working. So 2 of us, my girlfriend and I, left together when I was 21 and we went to join them. And that was the hilarious beginning of living in London for a few years, which was just fantastic.
So you're working in London and obviously you're going to the drop zone. Which drop zone were you continuing your jumping at?
I found a drop zone called Pampersford, which is near Cambridge. It's now called the Cambridge Parachute Centre, but it used to be called Pampersford. I met a couple of the guys from London who would drive there because I didn't have a car at that stage, but they would drive up most weekends. They would always give me a call. I mean, we didn't have mobiles or anything like that at that stage, but you had a telephone and you had a network, a connection. So I would usually get a ride up to Pampersford for the weekend. Sometimes, 1 out of 4 weekends, the weather would be great, so you would jump. But it was such a family atmosphere of learning. And it was a very beautiful way because the older, more experienced people always helped the young ones coming in. And I was just I was the young one, absolutely, coming from very far away. So I had so much to learn and it was just fascinating. So moving into my first square jumps and being sort of helped along by the more experienced people at Pampersford was a really lucky beginning.
Did you have major culture shock being in London, coming from where you came from?
Oh, gracious me. This was, as I said in my speech, this was like a learning curve on steroids. There were things I'd never seen before, but it was a wonderful enhancement to my own education. Just the streets of London, the fashion, the people watching, finding my way around London, going to theatre, it was absolutely amazing. I'd never lived in a city in my life. So the escape to skydive was actually quite nice because it was the balance of giving me back that space, but enjoying this fascinating new learning curve.
At what point, or do you recall the moment where you said, I need to do the balance of my life, which is professionally working to make a living, and saying, no, that's becoming less important for me. I now really want to start putting all my attention towards skydiving. Do you recall that sort of moment when that decision was going to be made?
Yes, I did. I'd been in London 4 years, and I really, really fell in love with skydiving. I also fell in love with the pilot. But I decided that I wanted to go and work on a drop zone and learn everything about aviation, and because I'd always been fascinated by aviation. I did some flying lessons when I was in my last year at school to escape boarding school for a few hours. It didn't seem to be a hard decision. Probably more disappointing not to anyone really. It was totally my own decision to give up a good job to actually step into a job where I didn't know it would lead me, and I didn't know how much it would consume me or involve me, not just in one thing, but in the whole stance of aviation and drop zone protocol, operations, learning, having fun, everything from fueling the aircraft to packing 100 static lines rounds that we used to train, because it was quite a jump for charity thing in England at that time. So there was a lot of static line training. The opportunity was there.
And at what point I do know that from there you go over to France. What was the connection there making that big move? Because that would end up being quite pivotal.
That's right. The reason why I first went to France with one of the English four-way teams, national teams, that was training for a world meet. So they picked me up as a handy cameraman for them, and I went to France to do a training session with them, because it's always very hard to find a cameraman and hard to find one that you've trained with and you can carry on and be confident with. So I came and did the camera slot for the English team. They took me to this place miles away in the south of France called Gap Teller. which was my first introduction to the south of France and to this fascinating national training centre for all of the French military and civilians that was going to be our home for a few weeks of training. Yeah, I fell in love with the place.
And did you end up staying, or did you go back to England? What happened there?
I went back, but I then came back to France. I was offered, I started being offered jobs paid as a camera person. So it was that whole drive of being offered opportunities where I could be working with a boogie performance, traveling and doing events and being paid. And then the coaches that were working at Gap Talar started offering me more and more jobs. Like, we've got a session of, they were training teams from all over Europe. So they were always looking for camera people to pick up in any discipline. Wendy, can you do this and this and this? Can you work with these people? Because they really needed the video footage for their coaching and debriefing. So it just became from a visit to a few jobs to full-time jobs. And in between that, I made a couple of trips backwards and forwards and then finally moved down.
There are many what we'll call camera flyers that will fly and keep somebody in frame. And then there's aerial cinematographers. When did you make that transition from someone that could take pictures and video to now really becoming a professional cinematographer, if you will?
I was introduced to some very good camera equipment, which meant building camera helmets that helped me line up my cameras correctly and be able to put not just a video camera, but also film cameras on my camera helmet and become proficient at being able to operate them with a hand operation and bring real images in short amounts of film, because with film, you just can't turn the button on and let it roll continuously. It will run out after however many seconds. So getting the shot in perfect framing and the right sequence with the sun behind your back, there are certain instinctive things that you learn as you're becoming a video cameraman, like, don't look at the sun, don't, to complement your subject, to find the most beautiful angles and the most beautiful things, you have to move to find them. And then you have to become instinctive at setting yourself up immediately so that you're not wasting time in free fall. And I just adored this creative challenge of having all of those things working in synchronicity to bring back the most beautiful looking images, because I could see them in my own eyes. So if my eyes had pleasure in what I was seeing and doing, I knew exactly what was feeding into the camera, that this would be successful.
Who are some of the camera flyers or aerial cinematographers that you looked up to then and now?
Absolutely. I can thank very, very, very heavily from the beginning of my first camera jumps. Simon Ward from England actually showed me how to build proper camera helmets, put a ring sight on my my camera helmet. So learning about good cameras, beautiful lenses, and the type of cameras that you could use with wonderful lenses for stills photography alongside camera work, your video, meant that you could always be bringing back more, the video and your stills. So this was something I actually started jumping stills cameras before I started video. So, which is the wrong way around, really. A lot of people just put a video on their head and then they learn to fly and frame. But I had learnt to frame the photos perfectly. So when I put the video on my helmet, it was lined up exactly as the frame of whatever lens I had on with my camera. They both worked perfectly together.
Do you recall when there is a moment where either you're seeing your photography in magazines, or I suppose the question would be when you became an in-demand camera flyer.
I suppose I got some fairly big breaks because when you're seen at a big event to be doing quite a creative job, and you see your images up on the big screen at night and everyone's standing up applauding, you know you've got to be doing something right. It's about not being restrictive with what you can do. And I was often given creative slots with big boogie skydiving where fascinating things would happen. And in France, I was lucky enough to meet Bruno Pass, who was the editor of Paramag, so magazine coverage, and then meeting Patrick Pass, who was obviously my partner of 11 years later. But when I first met him, he invited me to jump with his group. So it was given opportunities because I was showing off my work, which created more situations and more great slots, as we called them, to be able to bring back something creative. Or they would ask me for something absolutely dynamic. We want to see this, or, hey, we're going to go and do this amazing 3-way totem pole. Can you come and film us, Kiwi? And I just go, yes. Put me on the load.
The 20-minute call is supported by Freefall Films, the new AI video editing software that's taking the drop zone industry by storm. Savvy DZOs are switching to Freefall Films because it's easy to use and built with features to help you, the hardworking DZO, make more money. The best thing about Freefall Films is it's driven by passionate people who love skydiving and seeing their customers thrive. Get a free demo and mention the 20-minute call to receive a credit of $200. Freefall Films, simpler, more powerful, more profitable. At what point did you start learning to free fly? When did that come into your sphere?
Learning to free fly started quite early in the game. Because I'm just a small Kiwi, I had to learn to fly my body in all sorts of positions sometimes to keep up with much heavier subjects. And I didn't always like putting weight on, lots of weight on. I could put a little bit on, but not too much. It wasn't difficult because I learned to sit, to adapt to changing my position very early in the game, and then it just opened a whole three-dimensional playground. And I was seeing, when I moved to France, I was seeing all sorts of skydiving happening, and that was just so challenging because I got to fly with it, and I got to see how different people were beginning to fly with on their backs and with little gloves and mitts and transitioning and flying with things of all different speeds, and then all different speeds in one jump. So yes, it was very interesting.
How aware were you of Olaf Zipser and the movement that he was doing essentially in Florida at the time, with you being, I think, in France during that time as well? Did you have much of a presence of that movement?
Yes, but Olaf was out there doing way random stuff that was just extraordinary. Who's that guy? Hey, look how he's traveling around the sky. Someone that was also quite a mentor in those days and influence to me was Mike Michigan and Shelley, when they were freestyling, free flying, doing aerial pair synchronicity. And we were out there filming, and I did some training with them, and absolutely learned a lot about this speed change and anticipation, and then about actually choreographing, working together and doing movements that made movements look beautiful, and having your own movement as part of the act as well. This was just wonderful.
I remember you telling me that your as you referred to him as your partner in crime, was also Patrick de Gaillardon. A legend and way ahead of his time, but there's maybe a generation of skydivers today that don't know about him. Would you share some memories of Patrick?
Patrick de Gaillardon, yes. It's just legend. Absolutely. Moving to Gap Talar, I got to meet Patrick de Gaillardon, who became a great friend, but he was so ahead in his thinking. It was just wonderful. I met Patrick in Gap Talar because Gap Talar was his home as well, and it was his training drop zone in between competitions and different things that he would be doing around the world. He was highly sponsored by Sector No Limits, an Italian company, and he'd always be bringing a new board or a new groovy something to the drop zone. I just became his like, hey Kiwi, can you come and jump with me? I need to get some pictures of this, or let's go and see what happens when I put this on my feet. So we had such a fun relationship because he used to call me his little savage Kiwi because I was never afraid of what was going to happen. We were just like, let's go up and see what happens. But we off season, I would go and help him do tandems at Courchevel out of a plane. He was so ambidextrous. He could do anything in the sky, and he was so huge. It was always quite funny because you wouldn't think that the smallest girl on the drop zone and the tallest guy on the drop zone would be a fit in the sky, but we always had such amazing fun times, and you could always tell by his smile in the air. If the look changed, I knew there was trouble, but it didn't change too often.
So, Wendy, where does your story go next? You are building all these jumps in France. You're meeting these amazing people like Patrick and so many others. You're really in the hotbed, I imagine, of European skydiving. I think back to the original Airspeed trying to conquer the French at the World Meet. And so you're in that hotbed. Where do you go from there?
I kind of became resident at Gap Talar that was my home. I decided that was my home, and lived in the mountain village, and it was very cosmopolitan. There was lots of different nationalities there and people who worked there. Aviation was fascinating there. But with my work, I began to travel more and more throughout Europe for different events, skydiving events. The summer season would start, and everyone would be team training, boogie training, and then I started working at world meets. I would either be jumping with a team at a world meet, or I would be asked to do the media coverage, which gave me a slot to jump with all the teams and get some outside footage. And then I started working closely with magazines, and so that work became not just an archive for the event, but it also became a promotion for anyone who was being sponsored. People could show off and give back to their sponsors, and it would give something back to the drop zones that were hosting the world meets or the World Cups, because every second world there's a World Cup. There was a world meet to work towards. There was a World Cup to work towards every year. Boom, 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 and lots of training, and not always the same disciplines. So, and I would be there at a world meet filming all disciplines, not just one. So lots of different costume changes, but also lots of coverage of the best of the best, fighting the best of the best. And it was also a great opportunity to start building a library of archive of photographs of those people that had come through those years, year after year after year after year. And then the battles, the world meets and the battles and the top teams and all the people, the creative people that just stuck out as doing something different. And then in between all of that, there was the hybrid stuff that started happening in France. The French were very creative with hybrid things, and Patrick de Guedon, I must say, as a fantastic sky surfer and a person who was able to adapt and develop and create because of his mind and his curiosity about how he could do things in the sky. It was interesting because these other things became sports as well. The beginning of speed riding, canopies, launching, learning to parapente, learning to base jump, learning to sky surf, learning to do all these things in the air that helped with new developments, new hybrid sports, and lots of times going up and filming something for the first time, something that's not been done. The three-way totems, different things that have not been done. I had another little secret as well that I've always kept in my pocket, and that was the development of a camera suit, a suit that I would fly. Always had short legs because it was usually quite warm, but it had short legs and long arms. But I always developed and had my own special wings made for my camera suits, and these went right in the seam of my suit, but they were very small so that they wouldn't interfere with any of my parachute equipment. But they also were designed so that I could adapt from belly to sit in one skydive. So the transitioning was very easy, and this enabled me to do in one jump what some people could only do if they went down and changed suits and then did another jump to try and get the same shots. So I managed to be able to get a variety of shots all in one jump.
It sounds like that sounds like a very common camera suit today, but sounds like it wasn't really around during your day, at least during that period.
No, it's and again, not many, I've never seen anybody with a wing like mine. There are quite some wings that people use, and right now there's even a little harness you can put on over a suit that holds a wing on, but they're built for guys that are quite a lot bigger, and they're a bigger wing that doesn't that will give some buck when you transition. The secret is to transition it smoothly, and a lot of people will diversify a little bit with flying with the wings, but they're quite something to fly. You have to really train and know and be able to adapt and fly with them.
Wendy, you're also involved with big way skydiving. Your earliest, I believe, big achievement was you were invited to Myrtle Beach for the 200 way. I'm quite certain I've seen pictures of the 400 way taken by you. Am I correct about this?
Yes. Well, my big way experience started, I was a participant on the first 150 way in Belgium, Coxide, Belgium. That was a new world record back in the day. And there I met all of the sky gods, the best of the best, all the best sectors from Europe, which was fantastic. I actually got an invitation because of my work in Europe. I got an invitation by Norman Kent to be on his filming team for the 200 way in Myrtle Beach, which was another fantastic success. Half ocean, half water. That was a fantastic record. Then I went on to be on every other world record big way, which was into Bratislava, into Russia. Our great relationship of more than 10 years with the King of Thailand leading up to the 400 way. Yes.
Tell us a story about the 400 way. What stands out to you from that period?
The electricity in the sky of all of those beautiful people from all different countries of the world and all being able to achieve something together. My favourite saying is, when we're all up there, trying to achieve one goal. Everyone is at peace with one another, and it's just magic.
This episode is sponsored by SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA. Since 1983, SSK has served the parachuting industry, and today they focus on Cypress sales, service, and support in the United States. Learn more at sskinc.com. At what point are you introduced to Everest Skydive? Where does that come into your life?
That was in 2008. I'm still living in France. That was in 2008. And I was invited to be aerial director for the first ever Everest Skydive expedition. That was led by an English entrepreneur gentleman who had put the whole idea together. He had had some affiliation with Nepal. He had decided it was kind of like an adventure tourism operator out of England that had decided that Everest would be an amazing backdrop for inspirational people who wanted to come and do a first jump there. And working with primarily a first English team and the Nepali team, that was the largest ever yak train, I think, that had ever taken equipment up the Himalayas, particularly to Sangbuche, the largest expedition ever that we had up there, flying in an aircraft from Switzerland, having equipment that was new to all of us, not understanding how the openings would be, how the flights of the canopy would be, how the landings would be, and not ever wanting to land off. So the environmental weather, there was so many things in it, but we had such a very well-coordinated, disciplined team of people that knew their jobs. We just put those people into this environment, and knowing what we knew, looked after the clients that had come. But first of all, we made a few safety jumps. This was a very interesting, unforgiving environment. And the amazing thing was you had to trek up, survive the trek, survive the altitude adjustment, and then be able to operate at full speed at that altitude and keep safe and look after everyone and get the shots.
And when you say clients, tandem students?
Tandem clients, yes. And I think first Everest Skydive had solo jumpers from around the world and tandem jumpers from around the world. Yeah, these were people, they came from all walks of life, from Denmark, from the States, many different places, and it was quite the Reuters sought after reportage afterwards. It was quite phenomenal. We opened up a new adventure sport for the Nepalese, basically.
That first expedition, there's so much unknown.
That's right.
Were you scared?
No, it was fascinating. You trust your gear, you know your equipment, and the rest is really exciting.
Do you ever get scared?
I don't like scary movies, but no, I always try and figure out the logistics. I don't want to scare myself too much. I get excited, excitement, adrenaline. Things can be, sometimes things can be very serious. Then, you've got a different head on. Okay, this is a serious situation and you want to land on the volcano, not in the ocean, Wendy. So when I filmed my brother taking a tandem with a live broadcast for a adventure show in Australia into New Zealand's White Island volcano, 22 miles out to sea, we wanted to land in the right place. So there's excitement and there's adrenaline and there's a serious head.
Wendy, in the course of an hour's worth of podcast, we're hitting the high points, but there's so much in between. In this career of over 40 years, is there a particular adventure going, oh, I can't believe we did that, or that we pulled that off, or we had no business doing that jump? Anything come to mind?
Well, we had no business doing that jump. When we were training in Arizona to Patrick de Guerdon, here we go. Patrick de Guerdon had just made this new gigantic sky surf. The first idea was for Patrick to be on the board with Eric Friday in front of him, another French skydiving, ex-four-way, but sky surfing guru in the beginning of sky surfing competitions. So the idea was to have both Patrick and then Eric on the same board, but with their own parachutes and with a cutaway system. So obviously when they'd finished the free fall on with the board, they'd release the board and then they'd both go and open their parachutes. Well, this didn't work very well. Who was filming them training? So we were out there and I was filming them, and it didn't work very well because Eric broke his leg. And right at the beginning, it wasn't going to work. This big board with two people with two parachutes and the cutaway system, it wasn't going to work. And it didn't work because the system had broken. Eric had sustained a lower leg fracture with the release of the board. We needed a new plan really quickly because we were on our way to Tahiti to do a shoot. And this was for a program called Ushuaia in France, which we made quite some documentaries for with extreme skydiving, extreme places. So we turned up in Tahiti, Club Med, with a big board, some new bindings, a tandem parachute, Patrick de Guerdon, and myself going to be on the front of it. And we were jumping out of a helicopter. So there was a few things that were first. And I was like, well, I'm not too sure. The first three jumps, we had just a standard. We set ourselves up with a standard tandem harness and secured it and put the foot bindings in. Because I was so much smaller than Patrick, tiny in front of him, I had to be a little bit further to the front of the board. So the first three jumps, we exited the helicopter. Patrick Pass was rolling film at that stage. We had wonderfully dynamic cutaways from the board, and then obviously stabilised and pulled the drogue and had a tandem ride down. But it took us only three jumps with all of those odds not to land in the ocean. And the beach was only about 4 meters wide to land on, so we had to surf in on some of the water so that we could actually land on the sand. His experience in this was just phenomenal because it took only 3 jumps for us to absolutely get the weight and balance right on the board, move the bindings, move me forward, undo all the tandem harness so that it was completely open, so that I could move for the movements. And then we just hit it. We went up and we thought, right. And we just went out and did a full sequence, exited, stood up, and then started doing back loops and front loops and side loops and boom, and then opened and landed, surfed the board in, kicked it off and landed on the beach. And it was like, did we just do that?
Amazing story. Skydiving has taken you all over the world. What are some of the countries you've been as a result of skydiving?
Oh, Russia, Finland, New Caledonia, Lake Manapuri, the bottom of Fiordland, New Zealand, Milford Sound, somewhere you can't jump, a White Island volcano, Malaysia, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Langkawi, all of Europe.
Of all the views
Lots of places
Of
in
all the
England, lots of places in
of
the
all the
States.
views you've seen from freefall, is there one or two in particular going, wow, that was the most extraordinary skydive I've ever seen in terms of the view?
The colours get me. When there is beautiful reefs or beautiful water underneath you, it's really exciting. Or mountains, or big, I say Everest. Jumping where the mountains are coming up beside you is surreal. So yes, Mount Everest has been an absolute phenomenon of adrenaline and so many things intertwined into the Himalayan journey that led me to want to climb some of the mountains too, which was fascinating and fantastic. But looking down upon the mountains that are coming up beside you, or looking down at the ocean or a big body of water intertwined with a beautiful drop zone, Hawaii, Ile-de-Pin in the Pacific, which is a little island off New Caledonia where we did a shooting. Small beaches to land on, jumping out of a Hercules over the Gulf of Thailand where we had Thai Sky Festival during 10 years. Stunning island backdrops. Occasionally an off landing on a little beach of one or two of them. Yeah, it's really exciting. The beauty of the land and the ocean and the colours, yeah.
What an extraordinary career and life you've had. Wendy, were you supporting yourself financially all through much of that time just from skydiving?
Yes, and that's where I started using my ability to deliver people photographs of a session as well as just video. So I was selling my photos, printing them, selling them, working with magazines, getting assistance with travelling, and then delivering back media packages for sponsors, etc.
Just extraordinary. Have you ever been injured in your career?
I've had a few broken bones. I've had a few turned ankles. I've had a few lower leg fractures. I've had a bang on my shoulder from a radically fast opening where my camera helmet hit my shoulder and put me out for. Well, it's never put me out long, a few weeks. I can recall Granada World Meet in Spain, jumping with a plaster on my leg.
In order to, through the course of 23,000 jumps, those injuries don't sound too life-threatening. Sounds like you've been on top of your game. Is there anything in your preparation or your gear or, even just before you get on a load that you are irrationally picky about, that everything must be just so, that allows you to be this consistent?
Yes, I have a fanatical way of checking my camera helmet is clean of any areas where anything can snag. I've also been quite a pedantic pack your own parachute girl, very well known for it. I had a few beautiful packers through heavy training sessions and boogie jumps, trusted packers, absolutely. But I'm very suspicious of anyone who packs my parachute. I like to do it myself, and I always have. And then I know how it's going to open, nice and slow and on heading. Those are things, the rules of engagement for me. I'm looking at other people. I'm not just looking at myself. I'm looking at potential other things that could hit you, cause you, snag you if someone else has done something a little bit sloppy, It's eyes everywhere, not just on myself.
You've done it all. Is there anything that you haven't done that you'd still like to do?
There's a few extraordinary places that I would like to go and jump. Of course, jumping's slowed down a bit now, which is good because, my body needs to look after the old bones now. But there's still some exciting places to jump. I still absolutely love to see people initiated into their first journey into the air, into free fall. I love to be around the people that I've shared this earlier part of my life with. We have such a known friendship. You feel very at ease with people that you've done so many jumps with, and you've passed through so many different events with, or world meets. You have a trust in one another, and it's that trust that you've built in the sky over all those years that keeps your solid friendships on the ground. And that's really special.
If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. What would you say to someone that's just coming into the sport? What advice would you give to them?
I would say understand the history of the sport too.
That's lovely. And speaking of history, you were inducted into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame last year. What did that mean for you?
That was fantastic. That actually really helped me sit down and think for a minute and understand the amazing journey and the amazing people that have been part of my journey. Such gratitude, actually realising the archives and the stories and the people that I have passed and touched and have trust with and have love for. It's a pretty extraordinary life. Yeah, I've been really lucky, and the fact that I have done it so long is that I didn't give up. I always wanted to keep learning, and I always want to keep learning now.
Wendy, you have this way about you it feels like you're an eternal optimist. I don't sense a negative bone in your body. Am I right? And if so, where does that come from?
I totally am. I wake up and I'm happy every morning. There might be a few nursing duties that I go, that's not very happy, but I'll make someone happy. I am very optimistic. I'm very positive, and I love life. And life is to be lived and to be enjoyed and to be shared. If I can create a happy space in anything and everything that I'm doing, that is going to make somebody else smile and somebody else be able to do something or ask a question or share, or it's a way forward for me, and it's a way of life.
Did you have to make a conscious decision that this is the way I want to be, or have you always been like this naturally?
I've just always been like that, yeah. My mum said I've always walked around like I had a pair of rose-tinted pair of glasses on. And I was just like, well, I'm just like that.
And what did your mum think of this life that you chose? Because I recall you saying that the initial expectation would be that you would be married and have 6 children and settle in to where you're from.
Oh, yes, married to a farmer with 6 children and settled in, absolutely. I was probably very, I was a disappointment to my mum probably because I never did have children, but my siblings have had enough to cover me on that, so that's fine. And I stepped out of the comfort zone of anything that I knew, and being this small girl with blonde hair and skinny legs, I wasn't the type of person that, why should she be interested in aviation? Why should she be interested in all these boys things? That's not normal. But I did win my family's hearts, and I did also introduce all my family to skydiving. We had some drop zones in New Zealand, and my brother came out of the army and did his first jump hanging off the strut. That was fun. He was scared. And he went on to do about 3,000 tandems. I mean, yeah, I think I earned their respect in a big way.
Wendy, I always ask my guests about a crossroad moment in their life. And I'm wondering if you could think of a crossroad moment where perhaps you met someone that had you not met them, you would not have had the career that you've had, or perhaps you said yes to something that had you not said yes, your journey would have been very different, or you were presented with something and you said no. And as a result of saying no, the career arc that you've had was made possible. Can you think back to a critical crossroads moment that had you not met that person or said yes or said no, that it's likely you and I are not even speaking right now?
One instant would be meeting Patrick Pass in the south of France and saying yes to a relationship, but a working relationship, which changed the dynamics because we could start working as a team, and we had a relationship, but we worked as a team. And with Patrick to get on, that became a three-way team of extraordinary, wonderful opportunities. Yeah.
Wendy, that was the fastest hour and 5 minutes that I can remember. It was so interesting. And I know we've only just touched the iceberg, or the tip of the iceberg, with your journey. But thank you for sharing some of it with us. You are an inspiration. I was fortunate enough to listen to your Hall of Fame speech, and it was so incredibly inspiring. And I think that everyone in the room felt this is a very strong woman who has lived life on her terms. Yeah, it challenges me to live life more on my terms as you have done.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed meeting you and speaking with you for the first time in Florida last year. You make it so easy. You make it very comfortable, and it's such a pleasure because I've always been a little bit shy. A lot of people don't know that, but I have actually always been a little bit shy. I'm challenging myself now to not be afraid to talk about myself, So thank you.
I'm so glad you said yes. Thank you, Wendy. Such a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, James. So, I know it's the bottom of the world and it's so far away. When I had to come back from France, that was another sort of life moment. I decided 9.5 years ago. It wasn't a decision really; it was a visa thing. I'd never married Patrick, so the English had created Brexit and decided that all of their Kiwis with multiple indefinite visas, like I had for England because my grandparents were from there, they decided to cancel all of our visas. So they kicked all the Kiwis out of England, which then stopped our EEC visas, which was how I could live in France. And then I was living with a Frenchman, but I didn't marry. So the visa became, my visa then became non-permanent. So they would only give me 3 months in and 3 months out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
How
so
about
I had
that?
to make a decision and rebase myself to New Zealand. And that's when I came home and I just went crazy upskilling myself.
Wow. I was actually born in England. My mother's British.
Yes.
And my father is Antiguan, so I was raised on the island of Antigua.
Oh, beautiful.
And then came to the US for school and have been here 30-odd years since. But yeah, what a journey, Wendy. What a journey. I'm so grateful for your time today.
Oh, thank you. And if I can ever join you again later on, I should dearly love to. I've been really working hard on the book at the moment. My nursing contract for the last few months locked into the outback. I've sort of almost finished all the writing.
I'm glad you're still doing that. I would really enjoy reading that, I'm quite sure. And when it comes out, if we could have you back on, we can talk about it. By the way, I just had Joe Jennings on a couple of days ago. And if you've not seen his film Space Cowboy yet, you need to. I think you'll love it. And he talks quite a bit about Patrick de Guerdon in the film. So it was lovely to see. I've just only ever read so much about him, but to see him in action, it was really cool.
Yeah, well, I even had Joe out in New Zealand at one stage. We were working on a Walt Disney film together, and I've even got him jumping down in the South Island, right out of his comfort zone. But yes, he has worked. He's worked really hard through the sport, but he's also managed his company as well. Yeah, the people out of California, this is Hollywood for us, so it's like, ooh, it's so impressional,
Wow, I hadn't realized you'd done Walt Disney movies. How extraordinary!
Yeah.
If I were to look you up on
If
I were to look you up on IMDb, do you have a profile on that website?
No, I don't think I do. There's a few things that I'm really bad at, like marketing myself. I'll have to pull out a list of. I've got a list of all of the movies that I've filmed for or done stunts and etc. So I'll have to send that through to you, and then you may be able to find things that I can't.
I'll do some digging. Super. I will email you when this show is going to come online. It will probably be about somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, as we've been doing a bunch of interviews lately. But I will definitely let you know when it's coming. So.
Fantastic.
Super. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, James. And please, if I can ever be of assistance or we can help maneuver Melanie into position,
okay.
Absolutely.
All
Such
right.
a pleasure.
I may just cue an email to Melanie and CC you and just say what a joy it was having you and that we're waiting for Melanie to share her story. So
brilliant.
Super good.
Brilliant.
Thanks again.
Absolutely.
Have a super day.
Thank you, James.
Bye.
You too. Take care.
Many thanks to our title sponsor, SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA, for supporting the 20-Minute Call. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you want to support the show further, support the companies that support this podcast. Until next time, blue skies.